$10,000, that's the number nobody talks about. Not your financial advisor, not the personal finance influencers, not the books that promise to make you rich in 30 days. Everyone skips straight to 100,000, half a million, a million. But here's the thing. For most people, the real psychological and mathematical shift doesn't happen at $100,000. It happens way earlier than that, and it happens so quietly that most people miss it entirely while it's occurring. Because the moment your invested savings crosses $10,000, something fundamentally changes in how money works for you. Not in a motivational poster kind of way. In a cold, mathematical, measurable kind of way. And if you've been grinding toward that number and wondering why it feels like nothing is happening yet, this video is going to explain exactly why you're closer to a real shift than you probably think. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth about why most people never even get to $10,000 invested in the first place. And it's not because they don't earn enough, and it's not because they're bad with money. It's because the financial system around us is almost perfectly designed to consume every dollar we make before we can put it to work. Subscriptions that auto-renew, credit card minimums that eat the month before you can save anything, lifestyle inflation that expands the moment income goes up. The average American household spends 93 cents of every dollar earned on expenses and debt payments, which means the actual challenge of getting to your first $10,000 invested isn't the investing part. It's surviving the system long enough to have anything left over to invest in the first place. But let's say you clear that first hurdle. Let's say you've been cutting back. You've been contributing whatever you can, and your investment account just crossed that $10,000 mark. Here's what actually changes, and here's why it matters more than most people realize. First domino. At $10,000 invested in a diversified portfolio, earning the long-term stock market average of roughly 8% annually, your money is now generating approximately $800 per year in growth without you doing anything. Without another transfer, without another decision, without another hour of work, just sitting there. The $10,000 is quietly adding $800 to itself every year. Now, $800 doesn't sound like much in isolation, but reframe it. That's roughly $67 a month that your money is generating on its own, while you sleep, while you work, while you do absolutely nothing related to finance. For someone earning $15 or $20 an hour, that's 3 to 4 hours of work that your money is now doing for you every single month, automatically, for free. Second domino. Here's where the psychology shifts in a way that's hard to explain until you experience it. Before $10,000, every contribution you make feels like it carries all the weight. You put in $200, your account goes up by roughly $200. You don't contribute for a month, your account barely moves. The entire account feels like it's dependent on you, like a plant that dies the moment you stop watering it every single day. But once you cross $10,000, you start to notice for the first time that the account moved even in the months you barely contributed. Not by a lot, not by enough to retire on, but it moved on its own. And that moment, the first time you notice your money doing something without you, is psychologically one of the most important moments in any investor's early journey. Because for the first time, the abstract promise of compounding stops being a theory you read about and becomes something you can actually see in your own account balance. Third domino. And this one is about speed. Below $10,000, the gap between what your money earns and what you can earn at work is humiliatingly wide. If you make $40,000 a year, your invested $800 feels almost insulting compared to what your job brings in. But here's what most people don't track. That ratio changes every single year you stay invested. At $20,000, your money earns $1,600 a year. At $50,000, it earns $4,000 a year. At $100,000, it earns $8,000 a year. Every time your portfolio doubles, the annual income your money generates doubles alongside it, without any change to your behavior, your strategy, or the number of hours you work. $10,000 is the rung where you actually grab onto the ladder. Before that, you're still jumping for it. Fourth domino, and this is the one that actually determines whether any of this matters. $10,000 is the first number where the cost of quitting becomes real and visible. Below $10,000, it's easy to tell yourself it doesn't matter if you pause contributions for a few months. The account is so small that the opportunity cost feels theoretical. But once you've crossed $10,000, you start to feel the weight of stopping in a way you didn't before. Because now there's something real sitting there. Something that's already started working. Something that will quietly shrink in real terms if you stop feeding it and inflation eats its purchasing power. $10,000 creates accountability in a way that $500 never did. It gives you something worth protecting, and protecting it means keeping going. Sponsor segment, insert here, tied to the topic. Example transition. And speaking of knowing exactly what your money is doing month to month, that's actually why I started using sponsor name to track my portfolio instead of just checking my balance once a quarter and hoping for the best. Then a short benefit pitch, closing back into the topic. Now here's the part of this story that mainstream personal finance almost always gets wrong. The reason $10,000 matters isn't the number itself. It's what the number represents structurally. Because $10,000 invested at 8% is the first point where compounding interest starts to feel like a real contributor to your financial life, rather than a rounding error. And this is also why the specific path you take to $10,000 matters enormously, in a way most people don't think about. There are two ways to get to $10,000. The first way is slow, consistent, boring, and unglamorous. You automate a fixed contribution every month. You don't touch it, you don't time the market, and you let years of small contributions accumulate. The second way is to try to get there faster through higher risk trades, meme stocks, crypto speculation, anything that promises to shortcut the timeline. And here's the structural problem with the second approach. When you chase $10,000 through high-risk bets, you might get there faster. But the habits you build along the way, the behavior of checking your portfolio constantly, of reacting emotionally to every move, of treating your portfolio like a slot machine instead of a compounding engine, those habits don't disappear once you hit $10,000. They follow you to $20,000, to $50,000, to $100,000, undermining every gain at every stage. The people who build real wealth out of that $10,000 base are almost always the ones who got there the boring way, because the boring way teaches you how to leave money alone, which turns out to be the single most important skill in long-term investing. And here's the part that mainstream financial media consistently gets backward. The headlines celebrate the people who doubled their money fast. The profiles are about the trader who turned $10,000 into $100,000 in 18 months. What you almost never see profiled is the person who turned $10,000 into $100,000 by doing nothing interesting for 11 years. But statistically, the second person has a far higher chance of actually keeping that $100,000 than the first one does, because the skills required to double your money fast are almost entirely different from the skills required to actually build and preserve long-term wealth. So let's bring this all the way back. $10,000 isn't a magic number, and crossing it won't change your life overnight. But it is the first number where the math of compounding actually starts showing up in your account in a way you can see and feel, where your money starts carrying a tiny but real share of the work that your paycheck used to have to do entirely on its own, and where the psychological shift from I'm saving to I'm actually investing starts to become something you can measure instead of just believe. If you're below 10,000 right now, the entire goal is simple. Get there by any boring, consistent, automated means available to you. Because the longer you spend below that number, the longer compounding is something that exists only in theory for you, instead of in your actual account. And the moment you cross it and watch your account move on its own for the first time, even by just a few dollars, you'll understand in a way no article or video can fully capture why getting to that number was always worth the grind. If you want to keep seeing the actual math behind the financial milestones everyone talks about but almost nobody explains properly, hit subscribe. Because I'll keep breaking down the mechanics that mainstream financial advice tends to gloss right over, one video at a time. See you in the next one.